The tattoo parlor's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Captain Victoria Matthews rolled up her sleeve, revealing the intricate design that had been hidden beneath her uniform for 3 years. The fresh-faced ensign sitting across from her. Desk went pale, his coffee mug trembling in his hands. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." "Ma'am," he whispered, "that symbol ... I've seen it before." Victoria's blood ran cold. The geometric pattern etched into her forearm, a series of interlocking triangles surrounding. A stylized eye had been her most closely guarded secret since joining the Navy. She'd gotten it during a rebellious phase in college, drawn to its mysterious beauty without understanding its meaning. "Where?" she demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The ensign fumbled through a stack of declassified documents on her desk, his hands shaking as he pulled out a manila folder marked with faded red stamps. "Project Nightwatch, ma'am. Terminated." In 1992, Victoria Matthews had always been different from other Navy officers. While her peers collected commendations and promotions through calculated career moves, she'd earned her captain's bars through an almost supernatural ability to anticipate enemy movements and decode encrypted communications that stumped entire intelligence teams. Her superiors attributed it to exceptional intuition and pattern recognition skills, but Victoria knew there was something else at play, something she couldn't quite explain. The morning that changed everything started like any other aboard the USS Meridian, a guided missile destroyer cutting through the Pacific waters off the coast of California. Victoria stood on the bridge, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of amber and gold, when Ensign Derek Hawthorne burst through the door carrying a box of recently declassified files. "Captain, you need to see this," Hawthorne said, his usually steady voice cracking with excitement. The young officer had joined her crew 6 months earlier, fresh from Naval Intelligence School, with a reputation for his photographic memory and obsessive attention to detail. Victoria turned from the window, noting the unusual pallor in Hawthorne's face. In all their months working together, she'd never seen him look so unsettled. "What is it, Ensign?" "These files were just released from the archives," he explained, setting the box on her desk with trembling hands. "Classified projects from the late 1980s and early 1990s. I was cataloging them when I found something that ... Well, you'll see." Victoria watched as Hawthorne carefully extracted a thick folder from the box. The cover was marked with multiple security classifications, most of which had been redacted with heavy black ink. Only the project name remained visible: Project Nightwatch, Cognitive Enhancement Program, terminated. 1992. "What does this have to do with me?" Victoria asked, though something deep in her chest had begun to tighten with an inexplicable sense of dread. Hawthorne opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. It was grainy, clearly taken with surveillance equipment, showing what appeared to be a laboratory setting. Multiple subjects sat in chairs connected to complex machinery, their heads covered with electrode caps. But it wasn't the subjects that caught Victoria's attention. It was the symbol prominently displayed on the wall behind them. Her breath caught in her throat. The geometric pattern was identical to the tattoo hidden beneath her uniform sleeve, the same interlocking triangles, the same stylized eye at the center, even the same proportions and angles. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her commanding officer's composure cracking for the first time in years. "From the Naval Research Laboratory archives," Hawthorne replied, his eyes studying her face carefully. "Captain, you look like you've seen a ghost." Victoria forced herself to remain calm, though her mind was racing. She'd gotten the tattoo during her junior year at Stanford, drawn to a design she'd seen in a dream that had felt more real than waking life. The tattoo artist, an eccentric old man named Marcus Webb, who worked out of a shop in San Francisco's Mission District, had recognized the pattern immediately. "Interesting choice," he'd said as he prepared his needles. Don't see many people asking for that particular symbol anymore. When Victoria had asked what it meant, Marcus had simply smiled and said, "Some things are better discovered than explained." Now, staring at the photograph in Hawthorne's hands, she was beginning to understand that her tattoo wasn't just a random design from a vivid dream. It was connected to something much larger and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. "Tell me everything you know about Project Nightwatch," she ordered, settling into her chair and gesturing for Hawthorne to do the same. The ensign pulled out a stack of documents, many heavily redacted but still containing enough information to piece together a disturbing picture. From what I can gather, it was a joint operation between the Navy and several civilian research institutions. The goal was to enhance human cognitive abilities through a combination of pharmaceutical intervention, electromagnetic stimulation, and something called symbolic conditioning. Symbolic conditioning? The files are vague, but it appears they believed certain geometric patterns could trigger enhanced brain states when combined with other treatments. Subjects would be exposed to these symbols repeatedly while undergoing various procedures. Hawthorne pointed to another photograph showing rows of the familiar triangle and eye pattern covering an entire laboratory wall. Victoria's skin began to crawl as she studied the images. The symbols weren't just displayed randomly, they were arranged in precise formations that seemed to pulse and shift when she looked at them directly. She found herself unconsciously touching her forearm, where her tattoo lay hidden beneath layers of fabric. "What happened to the subjects?" she asked. Though part of her didn't want to know the answer, Hawthorne's expression grew even more troubled. That's where it gets disturbing. The project was terminated abruptly in October 1992, following what the files describe as catastrophic psychological side effects in multiple test subjects. Several participants suffered complete mental breakdowns, while others displayed what the researchers called anomalous behavioral patterns. He pulled out another document, this one a medical report with most of the text blacked out. Only fragments were visible. Subjects exhibited superhuman pattern recognition abilities and demonstrated precognitive responses to stimuli. And most chilling of all, complete personality dissociation after prolonged symbol exposure. The facility was shut down immediately, Hawthorne continued. All research materials were classified at the highest levels, and the subjects were double quotes. He paused, scanning the document. The subjects were relocated for ongoing observation and care. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. She'd heard enough military euphemisms to know that relocated for ongoing observation rarely meant anything good for the people involved. "Where was this facility located?" she asked. "That's the strange part," Hawthorne replied, flipping through more pages. "Most of the location data has been redacted, but there are a few references that slipped through. It appears to have been somewhere in Northern California, possibly near the Bay Area." The pieces were starting to come together in Victoria's mind, forming a picture she desperately didn't want to see. Her tattoo, received in San Francisco in 1998, 6 years after the project's termination. The dreams that had led her to that specific design. Her unexplained abilities that had made her career in naval intelligence so successful. "Ensign," she said slowly, "I need you to keep this information completely confidential. Don't discuss it with anyone else on the crew or include it in any official reports." Hawthorne nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "Captain, there's something else. These files mention a Dr. Sarah Chun, who was the project's lead researcher. According to this, she disappeared shortly before the facility was shut down. Her whereabouts remain unknown." Victoria memorized the name, already planning how she would track down more information about Dr. Chun and her connection to Project Nightwatch. But first, she needed to examine her own memories more carefully. There had always been gaps in her childhood recollections, periods that her parents had explained away as the normal forgetfulness of youth. Now she wondered if those gaps might hide something far more sinister. "I want you to continue researching this project," she told Hawthorne, "but do it quietly. Use only declassified sources and don't access any classified databases without my direct authorization. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, though his curiosity was clearly eating at him. "Captain, may I ask why you're so interested in this particular project?" Victoria looked at the young ensign, weighing how much she could safely reveal. Finally, she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Because I think I might have been one of their test subjects." The silence in Victoria's quarters stretched like a taut wire as Ensign Hawthorne processed her revelation. Outside the porthole, the Pacific Ocean rolled endlessly toward the horizon, but inside the small cabin, time seemed suspended. Victoria watched the young officer's face cycle through disbelief, concern, and finally a grim determination that reminded her why she'd handpicked him for her intelligence team. "Captain," Hawthorne said carefully, "if that's true, then we're dealing with something far beyond a simple historical research project." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Victoria nodded, rolling up her sleeve to reveal the tattoo that had remained hidden for so long. The geometric pattern seemed to pulse under the cabin's fluorescent lighting, and she noticed Hawthorne instinctively lean back when his eyes focused on it. "I need to tell you something else," she said, studying his reaction. "When you look directly at this symbol, what do you see?" Hawthorne blinked several times, his expression growing confused. It's hard to focus on. The lines seem to move, like they're shifting position when I'm not looking directly at them." This confirmed Victoria's suspicions. The tattoo affected others differently than it affected her. To Victoria, the symbol had always appeared static, unchanging, almost mundane. But to others, it seemed to possess an unsettling quality that made prolonged observation uncomfortable. "We need to dig deeper into Dr. Sarah Chun's background," Victoria said, making a decision. "But we can't do it through official channels. Too many questions would raise red flags." Over the next 72 hours, Victoria and Hawthorne developed an unofficial investigation strategy. Using his connections at Naval Intelligence and her own network of contacts throughout the military research community, they began piecing together the fragments of Dr. Chun's life and career. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and troubling. Dr. Chun had been a prodigy in neuroscience and cognitive psychology, earning her doctorate from MIT at age 24. And publishing groundbreaking research on memory formation and pattern recognition. By 1988, she was leading cutting-edge experiments at a private research facility called Meridian Cognitive Sciences, located in a converted warehouse complex in Richmond, California. Hawthorne discovered that Meridian Cognitive Sciences had been a front company. Its funding traced back through multiple shell corporations to a classified Department of Defense research initiative. The facility's official purpose was to study human performance enhancement for military applications, but the reality appeared far more complex. "Look at this," Hawthorne said during one of their late-night research sessions, spreading a collection of financial records across Victoria's desk. Meridian received funding from at least 6 different government agencies, plus private investors whose identities are completely obscured. But here's the interesting part. They also had contracts with several major pharmaceutical companies. Victoria studied the documents, noting the massive sums of money involved. What kind of pharmaceuticals? Experimental compounds designed to enhance neuroplasticity and memory retention. According to these procurement records, they were testing dozens of different chemical combinations, many of which had never been approved for human trials. The implications sent a chill through Victoria's body. If she had indeed been a test subject, her enhanced cognitive abilities might be the result of experimental drugs administered during childhood. The thought of being used as a laboratory subject without her knowledge or consent filled her with a cold fury. But their investigation took an unexpected turn when Hawthorne discovered a series of newspaper articles from the San Francisco Chronicle, dated between September and November 1992. The headlines told a story of mysterious disappearances and unexplained accidents affecting families throughout the Bay Area. Children between the ages of 8 and 12 were vanishing, Hawthorne explained, highlighting the relevant passages. The police initially treated them as isolated kidnapping cases, but look at the pattern. Victoria examined the articles more closely. The missing children all came from families with similar backgrounds, parents working in technology, research, or government-related fields. More disturbing still, several of the children who were eventually found displayed with the articles described as severe memory loss and behavioral changes. The timeline matches perfectly with Project Nightwatch's termination, Victoria observed. These disappearances started right around the time the facility was shut down. Hawthorne nodded grimly. And here's something else. I found a follow-up article from 1998. Several of the children who went missing were eventually returned to their families, but with no memory of where they'd been or what had happened to them. The authorities never found the people responsible. Victoria felt pieces of her own past shifting and rearranging themselves like fragments of a broken mirror. She'd been 11 years old in 1992, living with her adoptive parents in San Jose. Her memories from that period were frustratingly vague, filled with gaps that her parents had always attributed to a minor head injury from a bicycle accident. "I need to contact my adoptive parents," she said suddenly. "There are questions I should have asked years ago." The phone call to Margaret and Robert Matthews proved more revealing than Victoria had expected. After some gentle probing, her adoptive mother reluctantly admitted that Victoria's adoption had been arranged through an unusual private agency that specialized in special needs children with exceptional potential. "They told us you'd been through some kind of trauma," Margaret explained, her voice tight with old worry. "They said you might have difficulty remembering certain things, but that with love and stability, you'd develop into a remarkable young woman. They were right about that part." Victoria pressed for more details about the adoption agency, but Margaret could only provide a name that had long since disappeared from public records: New Horizons Child Services. Further investigation revealed that the agency had operated for only 2 years before, mysteriously closing in 1994. The threads of conspiracy were becoming impossible to ignore. Victoria realized she wasn't just investigating a classified government project. She was uncovering evidence of a systematic program that had affected dozens, possibly hundreds, of children throughout California. Her investigation took a dangerous turn when she received an encrypted message through her official Navy communication system. The sender was listed as S. Chen, and the message contained only an address in Monterey, California, and a time: tomorrow, 1400 hours, come alone. Victoria stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Dr. Sarah Chen, the project's missing lead researcher, was apparently alive and reaching out to her directly. The implications were staggering. If Chen had been monitoring Victoria's investigation, it meant the doctor had access to highly classified military communication systems. Despite every instinct screaming that this could be a trap, Victoria knew she had to take the risk. The address led to a small oceanside cafe in Monterey's Cannery Row district, a public location that offered both anonymity and relative safety. The woman waiting for her at a corner table looked nothing like the official photographs from Dr. Chen's academic career. Gone was the confident researcher with perfectly styled hair and designer clothing. In her place sat a woman in her early 60s, wearing faded jeans and an oversized sweater, her graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, but her eyes were unmistakable, sharp, intelligent, and filled with the weight of terrible knowledge. "Captain Matthews," Dr. Chun said quietly as Victoria approached. "Or should I say, Subject 17. Victoria felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The casual way Chun used that designation, Subject 17, suggested an intimacy with Victoria's past that was both terrifying and oddly comforting. "You remember me," Chun continued, gesturing for Victoria to sit. "Or rather, part of you does. The conscious mind forgets, but the neural pathways we created remain. That's why you've been so successful in your military career. Pattern recognition, strategic thinking, intuitive leaps that seem impossible to your colleagues, all gifts from the modifications we made." Victoria found her voice. "Modifications?" "Controlled exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies, while under the influence of carefully calibrated pharmaceutical cocktails. The symbols served as focusing mechanisms, training your brain to process information in ways that normal human cognition cannot achieve." Chun's voice carried a mixture of pride and deep regret. "You were one of our most successful subjects." The revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Everything she'd accomplished, every achievement she'd earned through what she thought was natural talent and hard work, had been artificially enhanced through childhood experimentation. "Why?" she whispered. "Why children? Why me?" Dr. Chun's expression grew haunted. "Because children's brains are still developing, still plastic enough to accept the modifications without rejection. And because the military needed soldiers who could think beyond normal human limitations. You and the others were meant to be the next generation of strategic intelligence officers." "The others," Victoria repeated. "How many?" 43 children participated in the full program. Some didn't survive the initial treatments. Others suffered complete psychological breaks. You were among the handful who integrated the modifications successfully." Chun reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital tablet, its screen displaying what appeared to be a map of the United States with red dots scattered across various locations. "These are the current known locations of the surviving subjects," she explained. "Most have gone on to careers in fields that utilize their enhanced abilities: military intelligence, advanced mathematics, computer programming, strategic planning. But none of them remember their time in the program." Victoria studied the map, noting concentrations of red dots around major military installations and technology centers. "Are they all being monitored? By whom?" Chun asked bitterly. "The official program was terminated, all records destroyed or classified beyond reach. The people who authorized Project Nightwatch have either died or disappeared into the shadows of government bureaucracy. As far as the world knows, we never existed." But Victoria sensed there was more to the story. Chun's willingness to meet with her, the sophisticated encryption of her communication, the detailed tracking of other subjects, it all suggested ongoing capabilities that went far beyond those of a disgraced researcher living in hiding. "You're still working for them," Victoria realized. "Whoever really funded the project is still active." Chun's silence was enough, Doctor. Chun's admission hung in the air between them like a poison cloud. Victoria felt her enhanced pattern recognition abilities kick into overdrive, analyzing every micro-expression on the older woman's face, every subtle shift in posture. The training she'd received at the Naval War College had taught her to read people, but these skills felt different, deeper, more intuitive, as if she could see directly into Chun's thoughts. "The project never really ended," Chun finally said, her voice barely audible above the sound of waves crashing against the nearby pier. "It evolved, went underground. The official termination in 1992 was just ... reorganization." Victoria leaned forward, her military bearing temporarily forgotten. "What do you mean, reorganization?" Chun glanced around the cafe nervously before pulling out a second tablet from her bag. This one displayed what appeared to be an organizational chart, but instead of corporate hierarchy, It showed a web of connections linking government agencies, private corporations, and research institutions that Victoria didn't recognize. The original Department of Defense oversight was too visible, too prone to congressional inquiry, Chun explained. So the funding was distributed across multiple black budget programs, each operating independently, but working toward the same ultimate goal, which is creating a new generation of human intelligence assets. Not just enhanced soldiers or analysts, but individuals capable of processing information and making strategic decisions at levels that traditional human cognition simply cannot reach. Chun's finger traced connections on the chart. You and the other survivors weren't just test subjects, Victoria. You were prototypes. The implication sent ice through Victoria's veins. If she and the other enhanced individuals were prototypes, it meant someone was planning to create more. The technology that had been used to modify their brains as children was being refined, improved, prepared for broader implementation. How many more? She asked. The current phase involves approximately 300 subjects across 12 different facilities. But these aren't children anymore, they're volunteers. Military personnel, intelligence operatives, researchers who've agreed to undergo the enhancement process in exchange for significant career advancement. Victoria thought about her own rapid rise through the Navy's ranks, the way doors had seemed to open for her that remained closed to equally qualified colleagues. Have I been part of this current phase without knowing it? Chun shook her head. Your modifications were completed decades ago. But your success has been carefully monitored, your career trajectory subtly guided to place you in positions where your enhanced abilities could be most effectively utilized. The revelation that her entire military career had been orchestrated struck Victoria like a physical blow. Every assignment, every promotion, every moment of recognition she'd earned, all of it had been part of someone else's long-term strategic plan. Who's running this? She demanded. I need names, locations, organizational structure. Chun hesitated, then made a decision that would prove to be fatal. There's a central coordination facility in Nevada. Underground complex called Foundation 7. It's where the current enhancement program is administered and where all subject data is maintained. She pulled up detailed blueprints on her tablet, showing a massive subterranean installation with multiple levels extending deep into the desert floor. The facility is officially listed as a geological research station, but it's actually the nerve center for the entire enhanced human program. Victoria memorized every detail of the blueprints, her enhanced pattern recognition automatically cataloging escape routes, security vulnerabilities, and strategic access points. But she also noticed something else. Chun's hands were shaking as she displayed the information. You're afraid of them, Victoria observed. Terrified, Chun admitted. I've been feeding them information about the original subjects for 28 years. Tracking your movements, monitoring your psychological stability, reporting on your performance metrics. But lately, they've been making moves that suggest the prototype phase is coming to an end. What kind of moves? Chun's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 of the original subjects have died in the past 6 months. Officially, they were accidents, car crashes, heart attacks, equipment failures. But I've seen the medical reports. All 3 showed signs of neural degradation consistent with deliberate electromagnetic interference. The meaning was clear and chilling. The people behind the program were eliminating the original test subjects, possibly to cover their tracks, before moving to the next phase of implementation. They're cleaning the house, Victoria said, and you're next on the list. Your meeting with me today has already been detected. They monitor all electronic communications involving original subjects. We probably have less than 12 hours before they make their move. Victoria's mind shifted into tactical planning mode. If Chun was right, she needed to extract as much information as possible before returning to her ship. But more importantly, She needed to warn the other surviving subjects and find a way to expose the program before more people died. "Give me everything," she ordered. "Names, locations, contact information for the other subjects. Documentation proving the program's existence. I need enough evidence to bring this to the highest levels of government." Chun began transferring files to an encrypted drive, her fingers flying across the tablet's interface. The evidence exists, but it's scattered across multiple security classifications. Some of it is buried so deep in the black budget infrastructure that even senior Pentagon officials don't know it exists. "Then we'll have to dig it out," Victoria said grimly. As Chun worked, she began revealing details about the program that painted an even more disturbing picture. The enhanced individuals weren't just being monitored, they were being used. Their career assignments were carefully orchestrated to place them in positions where their enhanced cognitive abilities could influence major strategic decisions. "Think about it," Chun said as she copied the last of the files. "A Navy captain with supernatural pattern recognition abilities assigned to intelligence analysis during the period of increasing global tension. A computer programmer with enhanced mathematical processing working on encryption algorithms for the NSA. A financial analyst with precognitive abilities managing investment strategies for defense contractors." Victoria realized that she and the other enhanced individuals had been unconsciously shaping national policy and strategic direction for decades. Every insight she'd provided, every pattern she'd detected, every recommendation she'd made had been part of a larger manipulation. "We've been their tools," she said. "Worse than that," Chun replied. "You've been their guinea pigs. Every decision you make, every success or failure, every psychological response to stress, it's all being studied to refine the enhancement process for the next generation." The file transfer completed, Chun handed Victoria the encrypted drive. "This contains everything I've been able to gather over the years. Contact information for 37 surviving subjects, facility locations, financial records, medical data, and most importantly, the identity of the man who's been running the program since its inception." Victoria looked at the drive, feeling its weight both physical and metaphorical. "Who is he?" "Admiral Thomas Blackwood. Officially retired from the Navy in 2010, but actually transferred to oversight of Foundation 7. He was one of the original architects of Project Nightwatch, and he's the one who's been orchestrating the elimination of the first-generation subjects." The name meant nothing to Victoria, but she committed it to memory along with everything else Chun had revealed. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Chun grabbed Victoria's arm with surprising strength. "There's something else you need to know," she said urgently. "The symbol, your tattoo, and the others like it, they're not just focusing mechanisms. They're tracking devices." Victoria felt her blood turn to ice. "What do you mean?" "The electromagnetic modifications to your brain created a unique neural resonance pattern. The symbols contain microscopic metallic compounds that interact with that pattern, making you detectable by specialized scanning equipment. They've been able to track your location anywhere in the world for the past 28 years. The revelation explained so much how her assignments had always seemed perfectly timed, how opportunities had appeared just when she needed them, how she'd never quite been able to escape the feeling that someone was watching her every move. "How do I stop it?" she asked. Chun pulled out a small device that looked like a modified medical scanner. "This will disrupt the resonance temporarily, but only for a few hours. The only permanent solution would be to surgically remove the metallic compounds, which would likely eliminate your enhanced abilities in the process." Victoria faced an impossible choice: keep her enhanced cognitive abilities and remain trackable by the people who wanted her dead, or undergo a procedure that would strip away everything that had made her successful, but give her the chance to disappear. Before she could respond, Chun's tablet chimed with an incoming message. The older woman's face went pale as she read the text. "They're coming," she whispered. Foundation 7 security team, 12 minutes out. We need to run. But as they stood to leave, Victoria noticed something that Chun had missed. Through the cafe's large windows, she could see 3 black SUVs positioned at strategic points around the building. Her enhanced pattern recognition immediately identified the positioning as a classic containment formation. "We're already surrounded," she said quietly. Chun followed her gaze and cursed under her breath. "They're faster than I thought." "Victoria, there's a service tunnel that runs under this building, old cannery infrastructure from the 1940s. If we can reach the kitchen, there's an access point that connects to the storm drain system." Victoria nodded, but she was already calculating odds and probabilities with her enhanced tactical reasoning. Even if they escaped the immediate trap, they would be hunted relentlessly. Chun was right. The prototype phase was ending, and the people behind Foundation 7 were prepared to kill to protect their secrets. As they moved toward the kitchen, Victoria made a decision that would determine not just her own survival, but the fate of 36 other enhanced individuals scattered across the country. Instead of running, she was going to fight back. The encrypted drive in her pocket contained enough information to expose the entire program, but only if she could get it to the right people. And she knew exactly who those people were: a small group of investigative journalists and government whistleblowers who had been trying to uncover black budget programs for years. But first, she had to survive the next hour. The kitchen's stainless steel surfaces reflected the harsh, fluorescent lighting as Victoria and Dr. Chun crouched behind an industrial dishwasher, listening to the coordinated footsteps of the Foundation 7 security team entering the cafe's main dining area. Victoria's enhanced hearing picked up the subtle electronic chirping of tactical communication devices and the soft whisper of suppressed weapons being readied. Chun pointed toward a heavy metal grate set into the floor near the corner of the kitchen. "That's our exit," she whispered, pulling a multi-tool from her jacket. "The tunnel system runs for about 2 miles underground, connecting to the old sardine processing facilities." Victoria nodded but held up a hand for silence. Her enhanced pattern recognition was processing the sounds from the dining area, mapping the movement patterns of at least 6 different individuals. Professional operators moving with the kind of disciplined coordination that suggested extensive military training. What troubled her wasn't their presence. She'd expected them to come. What troubled her was their methodology. Instead of a quick extraction team designed to capture and interrogate, this felt like a termination squad. They weren't planning to take prisoners. As Chun worked to remove the grate, Victoria activated the neural disruption device the doctor had given her. Immediately, she felt a strange disconnection, as if a low-level background noise she'd never consciously noticed had suddenly stopped. The tracking beacon in her tattoo was now dormant, but she knew the effect would only last a few hours. The grate came free with a soft scraping sound that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. Below, a narrow concrete tunnel disappeared into darkness, barely wide enough for a single person to crawl through. The smell that wafted up was a mixture of salt water, rust, and decades of accumulated debris. Chun went first, lowering herself into the tunnel with surprising agility for someone her age. Victoria followed, pulling the grate back into position just as she heard the kitchen doors burst open behind them. The tunnel was a claustrophobic nightmare of sharp concrete edges and standing water. They crawled through the darkness for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, guided by Chun's knowledge of the underground maze. Victoria's enhanced spatial reasoning allowed her to maintain perfect directional orientation, automatically calculating their position relative to the surface. Streets above. When they finally emerged through another grate into the basement of an abandoned warehouse, both women were soaked and exhausted. Chun immediately pulled out her tablet to check for pursuit. While Victoria assessed their new environment, the warehouse had clearly been empty for years. Broken windows allowed shafts of afternoon sunlight to illuminate a vast space filled with rusted machinery and scattered debris. But Victoria's tactical analysis revealed something interesting. The building's position offered multiple escape routes and clear sight lines in all directions. "We're clear for now," Chung reported, studying the tracking data on her screen. "But they'll expand their search perimeter within the hour. We need transportation and a secure location where I can contact the other subjects." Victoria had been thinking about this problem during their underground journey. Simply warning the enhanced individuals wouldn't be enough. Foundation 7 would just accelerate their elimination timeline. They needed a coordinated response that would expose the entire program while simultaneously protecting the remaining subjects. "The evidence you gave me," Victoria said, pulling out the encrypted drive. "Is it enough to convince someone in authority to act?" Chun shook her head grimly. "Not by itself. The documentation is compelling, but it could be dismissed as elaborate fabrication. We need corroborating evidence from multiple sources, and we need it to come from someone with unquestioned credibility. Someone like Admiral Thomas Blackwood, exactly. But getting to him would require penetrating Foundation 7 itself, and that's essentially impossible. The facility is located in the middle of the Nevada desert, surrounded by military-controlled airspace with security protocols that make Pentagon-classified areas look like public libraries." Victoria smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. "Dr. Chun, you're thinking like a civilian. I'm not planning to infiltrate Foundation 7. I'm planning to make Admiral Blackwood come to me. Over the next 6 hours, working from the abandoned warehouse." Victoria and Chun implemented a plan that would either expose the enhanced human program or get them both killed in the attempt. Using Chun's access to the subject monitoring network, they began sending carefully crafted messages to all 37 surviving enhanced individuals. The messages appeared to be routine check-ins from Foundation 7 oversight, but Victoria had embedded a series of coded warnings that would be obvious to anyone with enhanced pattern recognition abilities. Each subject received instructions to gather specific evidence from their current assignments and prepare for coordinated revelation of the program's existence. The beauty of the plan was that it played on the very enhancements that made these individuals valuable to Foundation 7. Their superior cognitive abilities would allow them to understand the true meaning of the coded messages while making it appear to monitoring systems that they were simply responding to routine communications. But the most crucial element was Victoria's message to a specific individual, Dr. Marcus Rivera, one of the enhanced subjects who had become a senior researcher at the Centers for Disease Control. Rivera's position gave him access to government health databases that contained medical records for all federal employees, including those working at classified facilities. Within 3 hours, Rivera had discreetly accessed the medical files for Foundation 7 personnel and discovered something extraordinary. Over the past 2 years, 17 researchers and security personnel at the facility had received a series of routine vaccinations that contained the same pharmaceutical compounds used in the original Project Nightwatch experiments. The implications were staggering. Admiral Blackwood wasn't just eliminating the first-generation subjects. He was creating a new generation of enhanced individuals from his own staff. People who were completely loyal to Foundation 7 and had undergone the enhancement process as adults, making them potentially more controllable than the childhood subjects. This discovery provided the missing piece. Victoria needed to force Blackwood's hand. She crafted a message that would be sent simultaneously to every major news organization in the country, along with copies to congressional oversight committees and international human rights organizations. The message detailed the entire enhanced human program, included the medical evidence of unauthorized human experimentation, and specifically named Admiral Blackwood as the current program director. But instead of sending the message immediately, Victoria programmed it with a 24-hour delay. Then she sent a single unencrypted communication directly to Foundation 7, addressed to Admiral Blackwood personally. The message was simple: release all surviving subjects and surrender yourself for congressional testimony, or the world learns about your illegal human experimentation program tomorrow at noon. You have 18 hours to decide. Subject 17. Chun was horrified when she learned what Victoria had done. You've just painted a target on every enhanced subject in the country, she said. Blackwood will accelerate the elimination program. All of them could be dead by morning. Not if they follow the instructions I sent them, Victoria replied calmly. Each subject received specific protocols for disappearing from their current locations and establishing secure communications with designated media contacts. Their enhanced cognitive abilities give them significant advantages in evading pursuit. And if some of them don't make it, Victoria's expression hardened, then their deaths will be part of the evidence that brings down this entire program. Sometimes you have to risk individual lives to save a larger population. The philosophy was harsh, but Victoria had learned it during her years in military intelligence. Strategic thinking required accepting acceptable losses in service of larger objectives. The enhanced cognitive modifications had made her exceptionally good at such calculations, even when the mathematics involved people she cared about. Over the following 12 hours, Victoria and Chun monitored news feeds and government communications for signs that their plan was working. The first indication came when several enhanced subjects began appearing on television news programs, giving carefully coordinated interviews about their experiences with what they described as unusual government research programs. Dr. Rivera appeared on CNN, discussing his discovery of unauthorized medical experimentation at federal facilities. A computer programmer named Jennifer Walsh spoke to the Washington Post about receiving job assignments that seemed designed to test her abilities rather than accomplish legitimate work objectives. A financial analyst named David Kim testified before an emergency congressional hearing about investment strategies that appeared to be manipulated by external intelligence. Each revelation added another piece to the puzzle, creating a coherent picture of systematic government abuse of enhanced individuals. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source, Margaret Morrison, a military psychiatrist who had been treating several active-duty personnel with unusual cognitive symptoms. Morrison revealed that she had been documenting cases of service members exhibiting superhuman analytical abilities, perfect memory recall, and what she described as precognitive strategic thinking. When she had attempted to report these cases through official channels, she had been threatened with court-martial and reassigned to a remote posting in Alaska. By hour 18 of Victoria's ultimatum, the story had become international news. Human rights organizations were calling for immediate investigations. Congressional leaders were demanding accountability, and foreign governments were questioning the extent of American human experimentation programs. Admiral Blackwood's response came at hour 23, just 1 hour before Victoria's deadline. Instead of surrender or negotiation, Foundation 7 launched a coordinated campaign to discredit every enhanced subject who had come forward. Official military records were altered to show psychological instability. Medical files were modified to indicate drug use and mental illness, and carefully planted evidence suggested that the entire revelation was part of a foreign disinformation campaign. The counterattack was sophisticated and effective. Within hours, news organizations began questioning the credibility of their sources, and congressional leaders started backing away from their demands for investigation. The enhanced subjects found themselves isolated and under increasing scrutiny from federal law enforcement agencies. Victoria watched the systematic destruction of their case with growing fury. Blackwood had turned the very institutions they were trying to protect against them, using the levers of government power to silence the victims of his program. but he had made one crucial mistake. By altering official records to discredit the enhanced subjects, Blackwood had created a digital trail that could be traced back to Foundation 7 itself. The modifications to military databases required high-level administrative access that could only come from specific terminals within classified facilities. Victoria smiled as she realized that Admiral Blackwood had just provided her with the final piece of evidence she needed to destroy him. The abandoned warehouse had become a makeshift command center as Victoria worked through the night, her enhanced cognitive abilities operating at peak efficiency despite exhaustion. Dr. Chun slept fitfully in a corner, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered printouts of digital forensic evidence. The morning sun streaming through broken windows illuminated a scene that looked more like a war room than a hiding place. Victoria's fingers flew across the keyboard of Chun's modified laptop, following digital breadcrumbs that Blackwood's people had left when they altered the military databases. Each modification had been carefully executed, but the sheer volume of changes required to discredit 37 enhanced subjects had created patterns that her enhanced pattern recognition could identify and trace. The breakthrough came at 6:47. Victoria discovered that all the database modifications had originated from a single administrative account linked to a contractor called Meridian Systems Integration. The name was deliberately generic, designed to blend into the thousands of technology companies that worked with the federal government, but Victoria's enhanced memory immediately connected it to the original Project Nightwatch facility Meridian Cognitive Sciences. A deeper investigation revealed that Meridian Systems Integration was more than just a front company. It was the primary technology contractor for Foundation 7, responsible for maintaining all digital infrastructure related to the Enhanced Human Program. Their security clearances gave them access to databases across multiple government agencies, making them capable of the systematic manipulation Blackwood had orchestrated. But accessing those systems left traces, and Victoria was about to turn those traces into a weapon, using techniques she'd learned in naval intelligence cyber warfare training. Victoria began mapping the network architecture that connected Meridian Systems Integration to Foundation 7. The enhanced cognitive modifications that had been made to her brain allowed her to visualize the complex system relationships in ways that normal human perception couldn't achieve, seeing patterns and vulnerabilities that would be invisible to conventional analysis. What she discovered was a digital empire that extended far beyond the simple enhancement program she'd originally uncovered. Foundation 7 wasn't just creating enhanced humans. It was using them to manipulate global financial markets, influence political elections, and conduct industrial espionage on a massive scale. The enhanced subjects weren't just test subjects or weapons. They were unknowing agents in a decades-long campaign to reshape world power structures in favor of American interests. Every major policy decision, every significant market movement, every crucial strategic advantage the United States had gained over the past 20 years could be traced back to insights provided by enhanced individuals who had no idea they were being used. Dr. Chun woke to find Victoria staring at a complex network diagram that covered 3 computer screens. "What did you find?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "The truth about what they've really been doing," Victoria replied grimly. "The enhancement program isn't about creating better soldiers or intelligence analysts. It's about creating a shadow intelligence network that operates outside all oversight and accountability." She pulled up a series of financial records showing massive, unauthorized transfers between government accounts and private corporations. "Look at this. Every time one of the enhanced subjects provides a breakthrough insight in their official capacity, Foundation 7 receives a substantial consulting fee from the agency that benefits. They're literally being paid for the work that enhanced subjects do without their knowledge." Chun studied the evidence with growing horror. "They've monetized human experimentation. The enhanced subjects aren't just being exploited. They're generating profits that fund the expansion of the program. It gets worse, Victoria said, switching to a different set of files. I found the real reason they're eliminating the first-generation subjects. It's not just to cover up past crimes, it's to make room for a new generation that they can control. More directly, the files revealed a chilling plan called Project Renaissance, designed to create enhanced individuals from birth rather than modifying existing children. Foundation 7 had been secretly influencing fertility treatments at major medical centers, introducing genetic modifications that would make children more receptive to cognitive enhancement procedures. Over the past 5 years, more than 800 children had been born with these genetic modifications. They were now entering school age, and Foundation 7 was preparing to begin their enhancement training through what appeared to be advanced educational programs for gifted children. They're building an army, Chun whispered. An entire generation of enhanced humans who will grow up thinking this is normal, who will be completely loyal to the system that created them. Victoria nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. A communication log showing recent messages between Admiral Blackwood and someone identified only as Director Prime. The messages discussed not just the elimination of first-generation subjects, but the termination of the entire research team that had worked on the original Project Nightwatch, including Dr. Chun. Sarah, Victoria said quietly, when was the last time you checked in with your Foundation 7 handler? Shun looked confused. 2 days ago, just before I contacted you. Why? Because according to these communications, you were scheduled for termination 48 hours ago. The fact that you're still alive means either their timeline has been delayed or... Victoria didn't finish the sentence, but her enhanced tactical reasoning was already calculating probabilities. Either Foundation 7 was behind schedule on their elimination plan, or Dr. Chun's meeting with Victoria had been a setup from the beginning. The possibility that Chun might be working against her had occurred to Victoria earlier, but she'd dismissed it based on the woman's apparent fear and genuine emotional reactions. Now, reviewing the evidence with her enhanced analytical abilities, she began to see inconsistencies in Chun's story. How had Chun maintained access to Foundation 7 systems if she was supposedly in hiding? How had she been able to track the other enhanced subjects so precisely? How had she known exactly when and where to contact Victoria? Dr. Chun, Victoria said carefully, I need you to show me the device you used to disrupt my tracking signal. Chun hesitated for just a moment, barely a second, but Victoria's enhanced perception caught the micro-expression of calculation that flickered across her face before she reached for the device. Of course, Chun said, but her hand was moving toward her jacket pocket in a way that suggested she wasn't reaching for the disruption device. Victoria's enhanced reflexes allowed her to move faster than normal human reaction time. She grabbed Chun's wrist just as the older woman's fingers closed around what felt like a small, cylindrical object, definitely not the disruption device. Show me your hands, Victoria ordered, applying pressure to a nerve cluster that forced Chun's fingers to open. What dropped to the floor wasn't a weapon, but something far more sinister, a small injection device containing a clear liquid. Victoria's ENHANCED pattern recognition immediately identified it as a fast-acting sedative delivery system. How long have you been working for them? Victoria asked, backing away and reaching for her own weapon. Chun's facade finally cracked, revealing a cold professionalism that had been hidden beneath the frightened researcher persona. Since the beginning, she admitted. The entire escape. From the cafe, the underground tunnel, this warehouse, it was all planned. We needed to give you enough time to contact the other subjects and reveal your capabilities. The implications hit Victoria like a physical blow. Every move she'd made, every strategic decision, Every moment of apparent victory had been anticipated and manipulated. Foundation 7 hadn't been trying to stop her. They'd been using her to test the enhanced subjects' abilities under extreme stress. The other subjects, Victoria said. Are they safe for now? Chun replied. But only because their responses to your warnings provided valuable data about enhanced human behavior under crisis conditions. You've all been performing exactly as the psychological models predicted. Victoria realized that her enhanced cognitive abilities, which she'd thought gave her an advantage, had actually made her more predictable. Her strategic thinking followed patterns that could be mathematically modeled and anticipated by anyone who understood the nature of her modifications. But Chun had made one crucial error in her assessment. She'd assumed that Victoria's enhanced abilities were limited to the cognitive modifications made during childhood. What she didn't know was that Victoria had spent years in military training, programs that had taught her to think outside established patterns, to break her own psychological conditioning when necessary. Instead of responding with the strategic analysis that Chun expected, Victoria did something completely unpredictable. She started laughing. "What's so funny?" Chun asked, clearly thrown off balance by this unexpected reaction. "You spent all this time studying enhanced human psychology," Victoria said, still chuckling. "But you forgot that I'm also a trained naval intelligence officer, which means I've been running a parallel investigation that you don't know about." While Chun had been monitoring Victoria's digital activities, Victoria had been using old-fashioned intelligence, tradecraft to build a completely separate case against Foundation 7. Dead drops, coded messages, encrypted communications through channels that predated the enhanced human program by decades. Over the past week, a team of investigative journalists, led by Rebecca Martinez of The Washington Herald, had been receiving carefully vetted evidence packages that Victoria had prepared. Using traditional spy methodology, the information had been independently verified through sources that had no connection to the enhanced subjects or Foundation 7's digital surveillance network. "The story breaks in 4 hours, Victoria said, checking her watch. Complete. Exposure of Foundation 7, Admiral Blackwood, Project Renaissance, and the systematic exploitation of enhanced humans, including your role as a double agent." Chun's professional composure finally cracked completely. "That's impossible. We've been monitoring all your communications." "Digital communications, yes," Victoria agreed. "But you forgot about dead letter drops, brush passes, and chalk marks on park benches. Traditional spycraft that doesn't require any electronic infrastructure." The sound of approaching helicopters began to echo off the warehouse walls. Victoria could see Chun calculating whether to attempt escape or try to salvage something from the situation. But Victoria's enhanced hearing had already identified the distinctive rotor signatures of news helicopters, not military aircraft. Rebecca Martinez and her camera crew were arriving to document the final confrontation between Victoria and the woman who had been manipulating her from the beginning. In less than an hour, the entire story would be broadcast live on national television, with Dr. Chun's betrayal serving as undeniable proof of Foundation 7's willingness to manipulate and eliminate anyone who threatened their operations. "It's over, Sarah," Victoria said as the helicopter sounds grew louder. "Your people played a perfect game, but they forgot that enhanced cognitive abilities aren't the only kind of intelligence that matters." Chun made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, lunging for the sedative injector she'd dropped. But Victoria's enhanced reflexes and military training combined to make her far more dangerous than Chun had anticipated. In seconds, the older woman was unconscious on the warehouse floor, while Victoria calmly prepared to meet the arriving journalists. As the first camera crew entered the warehouse, Victoria began to tell the real story of Project Nightwatch Foundation 7 and the systematic exploitation of enhanced humans that had been hidden in the shadows of American intelligence for over 3 decades. The truth was finally coming to light. the warehouse filled with blinding camera lights as Rebecca Martinez's news team set up their equipment around the unconscious Dr. Chun. Victoria stood calmly in the center of the chaos, her naval uniform somehow still crisp despite the night's ordeal. She watched the journalists work with the detached precision that had made her such an effective intelligence officer, mentally cataloging every detail that would matter in the coming hours. Martinez herself was exactly what Victoria had expected, sharp-eyed, professionally skeptical, and smart enough to understand the magnitude of the story she was about to break. The investigative reporter had built her career exposing government corruption, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for the scope of what Victoria was about to reveal. "Captain Matthews," Martinez said as her crew finished setting up, "before we go live, I need to understand something. You've provided us with extensive documentation of illegal human experimentation, systematic manipulation of government personnel, and unauthorized use of enhanced individuals for intelligence operations. But you haven't explained why you're coming forward now." Victoria considered the question carefully. The honest answer was complex, a mixture of moral outrage, personal survival instinct, and strategic calculation that even her enhanced cognitive abilities couldn't fully untangle. But for the purposes of the broadcast, she needed something simpler and more compelling. "Because 36 other people are going to die if I don't," she said finally. "And because the American people deserve to know that their government has been conducting illegal medical experiments on children for over 30 years. The live broadcast began at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, interrupting regular programming on every major network. Victoria's revelation was structured like a military briefing, methodical, documented, and devastating in its implications. She began with her own story, describing the childhood modifications, the hidden tattoo, and the gradual discovery of her enhanced abilities. Then she moved to the broader program, using Chun's stolen files to map out the scope of Foundation 7's operations. The financial manipulation, the political influence, the systematic exploitation of enhanced individuals who had no idea they were being used as intelligence assets. The most shocking revelation came when Victoria displayed the Project Renaissance files showing the planned genetic modification of newborn children. Martinez's camera captured the horrified expressions of government officials watching the broadcast, their faces reflecting the realization that the scandal would reshape American politics for years to come. But the climax of the broadcast was Victoria's demonstration of her own enhanced abilities. Using a series of complex pattern recognition tests that Martinez's team had prepared, Victoria displayed cognitive performance that was clearly beyond normal human capacity. Mathematical calculations performed in seconds, strategic analysis of hypothetical scenarios that demonstrated superhuman insight, memory recall of detailed information that she'd seen only briefly. These abilities didn't come naturally, Victoria explained as she solved a puzzle that would normally take hours in under 3 minutes. They were created through illegal medical procedures performed on me when I was 11 years old, without my knowledge or consent, and I'm not the only one. The broadcast continued for 2 hours, with Victoria methodically presenting evidence and answering questions from a panel of experts who participated via video link. Constitutional lawyers discussed the legal implications, medical ethicists addressed the human rights violations, and former intelligence officials provided context about the national security ramifications. Throughout the broadcast, Dr. Chun remained unconscious on the warehouse floor, serving as a silent reminder of the human cost of Foundation 7's operations. When she finally woke during the second hour, her confused attempts to deny Victoria's allegations only strengthened the credibility of the revelations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes of the broadcast beginning, social media exploded with reactions ranging from outrage to disbelief. Congressional leaders demanded immediate hearings. International human rights organizations called for investigations, and foreign governments began questioning their intelligence sharing agreements with the United States. But the most significant response came from the enhanced subjects themselves. Following protocols Victoria had established during her coded communications, 34 of the surviving 37 enhanced individuals simultaneously emerged from hiding to corroborate her story. They appeared at news stations, congressional offices, and federal courthouses across the country, each providing additional evidence of their exploitation by Foundation 7. Dr. Marcus Rivera held a press conference at the CDC headquarters in Atlanta, displaying medical records that proved unauthorized pharmaceutical experimentation on federal employees. Jennifer Walsh appeared before a federal judge in San Francisco, presenting evidence of systematic manipulation of computer security systems. David Kim testified to congressional staffers about financial irregularities that totaled billions in unauthorized government expenditures. The coordinated revelation was devastating to Foundation 7's credibility. Even if individual accounts could be questioned, the consistency of the evidence across dozens of independent sources created an overwhelming case for the program's existence and illegal activities. Admiral Thomas Blackwood's response came at 3:15 p.m., exactly 4 hours after Victoria's broadcast began. Instead of denying the allegations, he issued a statement through Pentagon channels claiming that all enhanced human research had been conducted under proper legal authority as part of classified national security programs. The statement was a catastrophic error that revealed more than Blackwood had intended. By acknowledging the existence of the enhanced human program, he'd effectively confirmed Victoria's most serious allegations. Constitutional lawyers immediately pointed out that no legal authority existed for non-consensual medical experimentation on American citizens, regardless of national security justifications. More damaging still, Blackwood's statement triggered automatic congressional oversight procedures that required immediate disclosure of all classified programs involving human subjects. Within hours, congressional intelligence committees were demanding access to Foundation 7 facilities and complete documentation of all enhancement activities. The endgame played out over the following 72 hours with a speed that surprised even Victoria's enhanced strategic reasoning. Foundation 7 security protocols, designed to protect against external threats, proved inadequate when faced with coordinated pressure from multiple branches of government. Congressional investigators, accompanied by FBI agents and independent medical experts, descended on the Nevada facility. What they found exceeded even Victoria's worst fears. Hidden laboratories containing evidence of ongoing experimentation on unwilling subjects. Medical records documenting hundreds of unauthorized procedures. Financial records proving decades of illegal funding diversions. Most horrifying of all, they discovered the Project Renaissance Nursery, a facility containing 43 genetically modified children between the ages of 3 and 7, all being raised in isolation while undergoing preliminary enhancement procedures. The images of those children, broadcast on news programs around the world, finally shifted public opinion from skepticism to outrage. The Enhanced Human Program wasn't just a violation of individual rights. It was systematic child abuse conducted under the cover of national security. Admiral Blackwood was arrested on federal charges including conspiracy, fraud, and violation of civil rights. Dr. Chun, despite her cooperation with the investigation, faced similar charges for her role in the ongoing exploitation of enhanced subjects. Dozens of other Foundation 7 personnel were taken into custody as the scope of the conspiracy became clear, but for Victoria, the legal victory felt hollow. Standing in the Nevada desert outside the Foundation 7 facility, watching FBI agents escort Blackwood to a waiting vehicle, she couldn't escape the knowledge that her own enhanced abilities were the product of the same illegal experimentation that had destroyed so many lives. The question that haunted her wasn't whether justice had been served. It was whether she could live with abilities that had been stolen from a child who couldn't consent to their creation. The neural disruption device Chun had given her offered a temporary escape from Foundation 7's tracking, but surgical removal of the metallic compounds would eliminate her enhanced cognitive abilities permanently. Rebecca Martinez found her contemplating this choice as the sun set over the desert facility. Any regrets about coming forward? The journalist asked. Victoria considered the question, watching as the last of the evidence was loaded into FBI vehicles. 37 enhanced individuals were finally free from systematic exploitation. 43 genetically modified children would have the chance to grow up without being turned into intelligence assets. Decades of illegal human experimentation had been exposed and shut down. No regrets about exposing Foundation 7, she said finally. But I still have to decide what to do about the abilities they gave me. Martinez understood the dilemma. Will you keep them? Victoria touched her tattoo through her uniform sleeve, feeling the geometric pattern that had marked her as an experimental subject for so many years. I think I will. Not because I want to benefit from what they did to me, but because someone needs to use these abilities to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. 3 months later, Captain Victoria Matthews stood before a Congressional Oversight Committee, sworn in as the newly appointed Director of the Office of Enhanced Human Rights Protection. The agency's mission was to monitor government research, programs for ethical violations, and protect individuals with enhanced abilities from exploitation. Her first official act was to establish a comprehensive medical and psychological support program for all identified enhanced subjects and their families. Her second was to begin tracking down the hundreds of other children who might have been affected by similar programs that remained hidden in the classified budgets of various government agencies. The tattoo remained on her forearm, no longer a tracking device, but a reminder of the price of unchecked government power. During her confirmation hearings, several senators had suggested that she should have the symbol removed to avoid any association with the illegal experimentation that had created it. Victoria had declined. This tattoo represents 30 years of illegal human experimentation, she'd told the committee. I'm keeping it to make sure I never forget what happens when we sacrifice individual rights for institutional power. As she settled into her new role, Victoria often thought about the 11-year-old girl who had been taken from her adoptive parents and subjected to procedures that would reshape her brain forever. That child had deserved protection, advocacy, and justice. Instead, she'd been turned into a weapon and manipulated for decades by people who saw her only as an asset to be exploited. Victoria couldn't undo what had been done to that child, but she could make sure it never happened to anyone else. Her enhanced cognitive abilities, stolen from a powerless girl 30 years ago, would now be used to protect other vulnerable individuals from similar exploitation. The geometric pattern on her arm had once made her a target for elimination. Now it served as a symbol of resistance against the kind of institutional abuse that had created the enhanced human program. Every time she looked at it, Victoria remembered both the victim she had been and the protector she had chosen to become. Tattoo that had once marked her as Subject 17 now identified her as something far more dangerous to those who would exploit the powerless, a survivor who refused to stay silent. In the end, that transformation might be the most important enhancement of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.